So hi, this podcast is focused on the concept of well-being and its fundamental presence in our lives. And we often forget or do not even know that well-being is our birthright and it is always at our reach. The testimony for this ever-present well-being is the fact that we have an innate drive in our body minds towards it. And in other words, everyone craves to be well in safety and comfort. My name is Anu Paavola. I am an Ayurvedic practitioner, author and educator, and the owner of Jivita Ayurveda, a clinic and spa in Kensal Rise in Northwest London. And today I'm talking with Debbie Fisher. Welcome, Debbie.
Thanks, Anu. Great to be with you.
Thank you for coming. And she's a long-term client of mine who is specialized in the concepts of well-being. And in 2017, after decades of teaching children with specific learning difficulties, Debbie became a founding trustee of an educational charity called iHeart, whose mission is to help young people uncover their innate well-being and resilience. And over the last 6 years, the charity has evolved into a dynamic organization that has reached and positively impacted over 25,000 young people in 22 countries. Significantly, in spite of the enormous challenges posed by the global pandemic, much of that impact has occurred over the past 18 months. Debbie has served on the iHeart senior faculty and trained thousands of children and adults in a variety of settings. And more recently, she has also taken her resilience training into the corporate space, where it is having equally powerful impact on adults working in highly pressured and challenging environments. So what inspired me to have this conversation with Debbie is because she helped my daughter to get over quite bad stress-induced eczema by teaching her in a series of sessions the concepts of well-being, how to tap into the well-being when it's lost, and how to respond to challenging situations. And I was present in these sessions, and following the program, I noticed how much commonalities we have between Ayurvedic healing and iHeart teachings about well-being. So welcome again. I'm very, very happy to finally do this podcast with you, and it's very exciting what you do. This is almost pioneering work to bring emotional intelligence and resilience training to schools, and now also to corporate world. And so can you tell us more about the iHeart? How did you come to develop it, and what's the program for, and its main focus?
So thanks, Anu, and I'm really grateful for this conversation. It's always lovely to speak to people who see the resonance of the work that we do in a different context. And it's always wonderful confirmation that when you uncover a universal principle that's true for all human beings, you start to see more and more evidence of that in so many different areas, and the implications of it are never ending, really. So yes, lovely to have this conversation with you. And so, yes, iHeart was born out of a group of people. We were all working to help adults at the time to uncover more well-being and resilience in the face of their struggles, whatever form that manifested in. And after a period of time, we just stepped back and said how much more powerful this work would be if we could be preventative rather than putting out fires the whole time, if we could actually educate young people about how their minds work and how their resilience and well-being is an innate part of them, so that they can prevent that unnecessary suffering down the road. And so that was the inspiration for iHeart. And we created, a group of people created a curriculum that was co-written by Terry Rubenstein, the founder of iHeart, and Dana Aronson. And it was really a living curriculum that we were testing in live classrooms. I was taking it into all kinds of different schools and environments to test it out and see how it landed. And we'd take on board the feedback that we'd get. and just use it to refine our message, to try and make it as simple, meaningful, relatable, and impactful as we possibly could. And then what we started to notice is that once we'd come up with a message that was so simple that even a 9-year-old could get it and just wrap their head and heart around it and run with it in their lives, that was actually hugely in service of adults, because we tend to be very attached as adults to our previous knowledge of how things work, including ourselves, and we're more reluctant to let go of those beliefs. And that working with adults can often, not always, but often be a slower process, whereas young minds are just so open and ready to learn and embrace something new. And so we saw that, yeah, that's actually an approach. The more simple and relatable we can make it, the more in service it is for adults to learn this too. And that is a huge part of the work that we do as a charity, because we adopt a very holistic approach. We're not only interested in teaching the child, we want to impact every adult in the lives of that child. So we run trainings for teachers so that the teachers in a school can all be on board with this innate understanding of their resilience and well-being. And also for the parents, we've developed online programs that parents can access to learn about it alongside their children, so that even if they don't have the opportunity to learn about it together like you did, that they can do that separately in their own time. Because often we've had children coming back from school telling their parents about this amazing learning that they're in the midst of, and parents will be curious and want to know more about it. So it gives them the opportunity to access that individually. We always make that available in the schools we work in. And recently a lot of the practitioners that we've been training to teach this understanding are doing one-to-one work of resilience tutoring. And so that was more the offering that you accessed, just for you and your daughter, so that you could learn about it together.
Yes, this is really kind of, I think, fundamental for us as a family unit, because then my partner did this at the same time with you. So we all kind of formed this underlying framework for healing, you know, through from, you know, past conditionings and whatever was guiding our behavior. And so for parents to understand the concepts of well-being when child comes to them, understanding the positivity, but parent might be in not understanding herself or himself the concepts of well-being, and come from that you know, background where you focus on trauma and focus on the negativity, finding the problems, whereas the iHeart is wonderful in that way, because it focuses on that positive concept of well-being and the fact that it's always accessible. And I always you know, when I studied Ayurveda, it started a very complicated process in my head, and I thought it wasn't inspiring me too much because of the complication in it. But I just realized it was taught to me upside down, from, you know, from the end to beginning, rather than just kind of from the easy to complicated. And then, you know, the more I studied, the easier I realized it is, that I had just kind of really grabbed the bull not by the horns, but from the tail, to try to kind of manage it. So in that way, the simplicity of your message, and then when I realized that Ayurveda is actually really simple, why am I making it so complicated? And this is really the most powerful healings as well, are very simple. You don't have to complicate things, and the message is simple, the method is simple, and there is some sort of a need for us to know so much and learn so much and understand everything, and then it's just overwhelming and feels complicated. But simplify, simplify, simplify really is what we kind of how we achieve great results, I think. And your program, and I think both Ayurveda and your program do, you know, start from that.
Absolutely. I think my whole teaching profession, you could distill it into one little acronym, which is the word I was told, KISS, K-I-S, keep it simple.
Yes.
And I've taken that with me throughout my career, and it really has served me well, because I know that when I can see something simply in my own mind, then I've got a good opportunity to be able to communicate that clearly to others. And when, like you said, it's all complex in my own mind, then I don't know where to begin to start, expressing and communicating that to others. So yeah, definitely. And because we know that when you uncover a truth that is so universal and constant in its nature, then you don't need to do so much hard work. You just need to point people in the right direction. And it's through their own personal insight that they will be changed, that they will be healed, that they will start to uncover what they need to see. It was always there. It just wasn't clearly in their focus. That's all.
Absolutely. I have an acronym as well. It's 3 S's: simple, slow, and seasonal. And love those things. But yes, and then to say, well, it's the experience that teaches people. And when you go through experiences one thing at a time, and teaching the way you do in your program, one kind of very simple topic at every lesson, but it teaches you so much, because that pattern can be applied anywhere, anytime, in any age group, as we already highlighted, that it's both teachers, children, and professionals who can benefit from this program.
Yes, exactly. It's just a truth about human nature and how our minds work. And so it doesn't matter who you are, what age, where you're from, what you've been through, where you're heading. None of that actually matters, because it's still true. There are no exceptions to it. So that's powerful, yes, to find something that universal.
I found that in the iHeart, that concept of well-being connected one day. I was thinking about it when I was, as an educator, I was obviously finding different ways of explaining what Ayurveda is, and because there isn't really a very one sentence that describes the whole thing, but there is something I realized then. Ayurveda is a science that to promote safety and comfort, to always do the adjustment that we do to find safety and comfort in our environment, changing environment. But that safety and comfort is just another definition for well-being. And that's a very universal fact. Every living being, be it a human being or a cell in a human being, or a plant or a cell in a plant, they all kind of strive for that feeling of safety and comfort, which really define well-being. So it's a universal, applicable to everyone, no matter who they are. They have this innate need to be well, and it's like natural inclination of everyone to find ways to come to that well-being. So what are your experiences and the results that you can see in your clients when they reach that well-being, and when they understand the concept of well-being?
So the concept of well-being that we are exploring and helping people to see for themselves is that it's actually a default setting, like you say. It's our birthright. It's something that is just an unchangeable part of who we are as human beings. And so even if we're not experiencing that well-being in a moment or for a period of time, it's not actually an indication that it's damaged or lost or broken in any way. It's just a sign that it's covered up. And so what we help people to do is to see what that coverage is created by in our minds, what the thinking or belief system is that's creating that cloud coverage over that. We use the metaphor of well-being as a sun, an inner sun that's there like a light shining within us, but that when we can't see it, we can't feel it. And that's not to say it's not there. It's just that it's obscured, it's covered up. And we teach them how they can uncover it again once they understand what it is that's clouding it over. And so what I like to help people see is that we all have that experience of well-being. It may be very deeply covered up, so much so that we've lost sight of it for a long time. We can't even remember maybe that it was there once, but it was always there, because it is a part of us. And so when people get curious and they start to be looking through that perspective of an awareness of that well-being in themselves, then they start to have eyes for it more. They start to see the evidence of it more, even if it's not constant, even in their experience, even if it's not, they've not had that experience for a long time. Like you say, there'll be a knowing that that's what they want, what they want to get back to.
Yeah.
And so that's what we help them do, is understand why it got covered up and how they can get back to that part of themselves that's always there. It can never be extinguished.
Yes. It's a very comforting thought when you kind of have that insight. Yes, it's always there. It's very good to know in situations of challenge that once you just resolve the challenge, you will land on it. You know, there is, I talk about this like magnetic plate that is, you know, the well-being plate where we always land on. So there's like a force that comes and tries to pull you off that plate, and then like an elastic band, you know, at some point you manage to resolve, you plummet back on the land of well-being. It's you know, it is like that, you know, and you're trying to do everything in your power to resolve that problem. When you get uncomfortable, when you start, let's say it's a simple fact, if you start feeling cold, you do everything in your power to get back warm, and you're back in the well-being. And then it's really fascinating at what we can achieve in that place of well-being. So once you are relaxed and have that safety and comfort, then the creativity and opportunities to, you know, relate and to others in a different way become much more easier rather than when we're trying to cope in a situation of challenge. However, the knowledge, the notion that well-being is always there makes the challenge itself much more bearable, because you have that confidence and feeling that you're not lost. Things just have to be resolved.
Exactly, that there is always a solution, but when our minds are all over the place, we can't see the wood for the trees.
Yes.
So the solution is right there, or it can be right under our nose, but we don't notice it. And yes, we're showing people that actually we have within us everything that we need, all the capacity for wise, helpful thinking, for hope, for gratitude, for resilience, for love, for compassion, and for that important sense of inner confidence, psychological security.
Yeah.
These are all different aspects of what we call this umbrella term, well-being.
Yes, it is an umbrella term, yes.
Yes. And that the more you start to see evidence of those capacities within yourself, the less likely you are to doubt them. The more confidence you'll have that, yes, maybe you're a bit all over the place right now, but when your mind settles down, you will be able to get more perspective. You will be able to see more clearly and think creatively to solve problems and deal with issues that need your attention and your energy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something quite extraordinary in your approach, which I noticed that it really works, you know, again, with the same principles of my trade. And you already mentioned something which we both emphasize, which is the preventative aspect of, you know, just not falling ill. It's always a better than healing. So my approach to prevention is mainly through diet and lifestyle, and having timings right and seasonality. So and through those, learning to use food as medicine when imbalances happens. So that's kind of the my speciality. How do you advise your audience, and how does your program advise to face challenges in life?
So we have a very similar approach, because we're showing people that wherever we're struggling in our lives, that instead of that being a sign that there's something very wrong with us or the situation that we find ourselves in, the circumstance, it's actually, the struggle is just a symptom. It's not the root cause of what we're up against. And so we look deeper into our minds to see what is that belief that my mind is making my well-being dependent or conditional upon. And so then, you know, just like that metaphor, like you said, you know, with your daughter's eczema, that if it was only ever treated topically with creams and ointments and steroids, then yes, the symptoms may abate for a short while, but because we're not treating the root cause, they'll just come back again. And we're seeing exactly the same thing with psychological struggle, with stress and anxiety and worry, which is the root cause of so many physical ailments, because they will, if they go unchecked, end up manifesting on a physical level. So we're going to look within our minds to see what these underlying beliefs are that are very deeply rooted, that we've been so conditioned to believe that we can only be okay if and when. And when we start to see what those unconscious beliefs are, that's already the first step, because if you don't even know what they are, they will just carry on dictating what you think and feel and how you experience life. But once you've identified that they're there and they're not actually true, they weren't always true for you, and they're definitely not true for everyone, then they become a lot more optional and less required. And then when you start to see the implication of adopting those beliefs in your life are so detrimental to your well-being, it just covers up your confidence and takes away your capacity for resilience and well-being, then your relationship with those ideas naturally changes over time. You start to realize that even if the situation isn't ideal or optimal or what you would have liked or wanted in life, that you can still be in your well-being. You still have everything you need within you to be able to handle that situation. And like you've said, when we can approach our struggles and our issues in life from that sense of calm and well-being that we can always access in our minds, it's like looking at life through a different lens, a lens of hope and potential and possibility.
Lots of people are just lost at the moment because first of all, being not able to understand their own health and well-being, being at their, you know, kind of ability to access that, and have to rely on some other people to tell them what's wrong with them or find a cure for them. Whereas both our programs, I guess, give that power to people to, which then again kind of come back into that kind of comforting element that I was talking about, because when you learn to understand what is in your body and mind, and you can have, you know, immediately within your context that you live in, you know, you find the solutions there, and then recognize when a problem is arising. Sometimes we don't let things come up, you know, in our bodies and minds grow to that extent that then it's a clinical condition. Whereas the preventative element is and connected with kind of the power, the empowerment that it creates with it's just something it's just very handy, and lets our lives be more, you know, in tune with our bodies and minds when we learn to interpret the signs from them early enough before issues become problems.
Exactly.
And so once you understand the principles, you're not kind of dependent anymore to ask someone if there's anything wrong with you, you know, and you're empowered by that knowledge, and you can correct your imbalances. And you know, that's what I found being one of the most powerful lessons in iHeart, that we're not lost in that jungle of emotions, especially that there is something we can do about them, and by understanding how to land in that kind of present or ever-present underlying platform of well-being. And
exactly. If we don't know what the barriers are to it, then we can't remove them.
Exactly. Yes.
The beauty of this understanding is that it's almost a learning of subtraction. It's actually with each new insight into more of the truth of the fact that this well-being is within us always, then you have more confidence. You don't doubt that so much. And so whenever, like you say, you hit a bump on the road, there is an obstacle that seems to be blocking you. You have this awareness that it's actually a false barrier, that it's more of an illusion than a fact. And then your whole approach to it is one of much more confidence and calm, and you can just think rationally, okay, now what is my mind believing that's creating this struggle for me? And why am I experiencing this right now? What can I learn from this situation, rather than feeling a victim of it and powerless in the face of it? You can almost embrace it, whatever the feeling is, and just see that it's an opportunity actually to uncover more of these unconscious beliefs in our mind, and then to be able to challenge them when you can sense that they can't actually be true, even though they seem to be right now.
And there is so much joy in the kind of giving people insights, not only for you because you can see them developing, but themselves when they say, oh my God, this is really something I've been carrying with me, but I can get rid of it and resolve. And then that again, so kind of gives them more motivation and inspiration to continue to do something else, because if I can do this, then I can do that. And it's just kind of cascade of positive elements that then kind of start developing in their lives. So it just but it is like for the mind and the body, it's always a removal of barriers, and then you come to that place of safety and comfort, or the well-being. Then just kind of the world is your oyster for what you can do. And then nature really takes, Ayurvedic we speak, nature really taking kind of start something called self-regulation. Once you achieve a place of safety and comfort, it means that there's flow of blood, there's flow of lymph for detoxification, the nerve impulses are conducted smoothly, and so information travels from one part to another with ease once you are in the well-being. But when you don't have it, you become tense. So whenever you don't have safety and comfort, you're tense, and then less flow of blood, less oxygen, less detoxification, less kind of cognitive functions, and all those kind of things that really make us live a full life. And so there is so much potential in that space of well-being, and it really is amazing what the work that you do is, that you've kind of started the work, at least from children, that once they have that from the beginning. I wish I had that from the beginning. Came to quite late, but but at the same time now for you, as you mentioned, the corporate environment is starting to get a piece of you. So how can a 50-year-old be empowered by your teachings?
So yes, I'm often asked that question, and it always amuses me, because really what I'm teaching is no different to what I'd teach a 5-year-old in its essence. The only difference is that by the time we hit 50, we've accumulated so many conditioned beliefs about who we think we are, and what we think we can handle and what we don't. And our minds are just so overly conditioned that we've lost sight of this innate well-being and resilience. And so the process is no different. And what I'm really encouraged to see is that even though in the face of this terrible pandemic of mental suffering that we're seeing in the world today, that we're now, it seems, at such a crisis point that people are beginning to take personal responsibility for their own well-being. Organizations are seeing that the only way forward for them to succeed as an organization is to take serious accountability for the well-being of the people that they employ. And so I'm really finding that it's very hopeful, actually more than you'd imagine, in terms of people are actually ready to admit now that there is a huge problem in the way we relate to our psychological well-being in the world, and that we need to see something fundamentally new about that in order to create sustainable change moving forwards. And so I'm very encouraged by the receptivity of the organizations and the people within those organizations, whether it's senior leaders or people that are even just part-time employees. See how deeply this understanding resonates with them, and how quickly they can apply these fundamental principles into their own life and immediately start to see the benefits of it.
Yes, and that simplicity factor plays well into their advantage, because often that kind of health and well-being scenario, or talking about health and well-being, you know, to senior management, there is also kind of there's not really an understanding even what that means. It's something light-hearted, or something that people don't take much seriously. But once you offer them a model that is very easy and applicable in situations and can bring the results that they want, because you can't whip a tired horse too much, you know. And this is what we're doing to our workforce at the moment, you know, especially something like London, you know, seeing people working, you know, exceptionally long hours, and no rest. Well, what is the productivity there? And you can't just expect a different result by doing always the same thing. So that change has to happen. And so models like this, or programs like this, are really needed. People don't know how to manage their diet and lifestyle in order to get more energy. People don't know how to manage their, you know, psychological, you know, environment, let's say, inside and outside, how to relate, how to co-regulate, how to be a compassionate business person, or a compassionate and you know, environmentalist, and just, you know, create that sustainable sense of a sustainable way of living, both you know, your personal life, and manage that needs of energy and vitality, and, you know, the same that you need in a work environment to bring the results that are needed from you.
And you know what's fascinating to me, Anu, is that there are so many the people that actually do know what it takes. They do know what they should be doing, but they still can't implement it. They can't actually apply it to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's because there are still these blind spots of what we're calling attachments, believe that there are certain external conditions that your self-worth does depend on, whether it's that success or that financial security or that job status, or people wanting and appreciating you and valuing you. So many of these conditions that even though we'll know what we should be doing, it won't allow, minds will not allow us to step back, to create more balance between work life and home life. And so, like you've said, when you can shine a light on those beliefs and help a person to see that they're not actually true, that there isn't actually any substance or validity to them, that they're just an illusion.
Yeah.
And then for the first time, they can see more clearly what it is that will be the right thing for them moving forward. Because I think deep down we do know, but there's so much noise and interference from all these competing conditions on our perceived well-being that that we don't have the quiet in our minds to hear what it is that we need.
Yeah, we're so stuck on in our conditionings, and even if we know something has to happen, the change has to happen, and knowing that the change on the other side, if you reach that new goal, there is well-being, but the change itself is a very frightening place for many people. Just go through that, you know, just leaving, let's say, like smoking a cigarette, you know, changing it, you know, that on the other side, when you get rid of them, you will be healthier. But then to go through that struggle of leaving that you know, addiction behind, you have to make an effort. That really is what the behavioral parts of that, you know, behavioral change, I guess it's the biggest challenge. My clients say, yeah, your program makes complete change, complete, sense. But then, I couldn't, because I couldn't do this. Then I was snacking, and then I was, eating it late in the evenings. I know they're bad, but I can't let them go because I love it. Or, I know I don't sleep well because I eat, but I still do it. So it's the change is I think the most frightening, or biggest barrier, I guess, now that we're talking about them.
So, from my experience, I've found that we don't resist change in itself as much as there's a resistance to being changed. So that when we're not ready for that change, when it's not happening organically just through our own insight, then of course there's this resistance, because our defenses go up and we cling to the things that appear to give us that peace of mind and well-being and security. And we're not willing to let go of them. And if they're challenged and taken away from us, we struggle. But when a person insightfully sees that not only, for instance, is smoking objectively detrimental to a person's well-being, but they get their own physical wake-up call where they see the price that they're paying for that habit, then that's a catalyst for change, because then they have an innate motivation and incentive to change that habit. And so then when it's coming from that place of inspiration rather than desperation, then actually, I'm sure you'll agree from your own experience of change in your life, that even if it can be a challenge to your system, and it might take hard work and commitment, when you know that you're heading in the right direction for your own well-being, there isn't any fear. There's almost a sense of excitement, actually, and curiosity. Where is this going to take me?
Yes, I think at that point, when it becomes inspirational rather than desperational, then there is that insight of the well-being has kind of been, the understanding has sunk in. That although the present condition is not the well-being that you would want, but that it's there, you've understood that this is, and that gives lots of hope and inspiration, kind of motivation to continue on that path. But you're absolutely right. You can't force it. It has to come through an experience, just kind of that awakening almost, that and then knowing the well-being is achievable, knowing that the well-being is right there. Those efforts that you make them, they become much less intense.
Exactly. And I think, our minds are clever. And if we start to do that cost benefit analysis, and you see from your own experience that the overall benefit of a change in behavior far outweighs the cost, then you don't struggle to move in that direction anymore. It makes complete sense. It actually becomes the path of least resistance instead of the path of most resistance. And so it's about seeing that the well-being we're talking about, it's an inner well-being. It's something that has an abundant source within us that isn't dependent on anything external. And so that becomes priceless, that becomes invaluable, that becomes an inner resource, a treasure that we have an unlimited supply of. And so, of course, that's going to make a person more confident and more secure and more empowered, because we're not making them dependent on something external. It's quite the opposite. It's saying, no, we don't need any of these external factors to give us this well-being. It's already there.
We could almost say that it's in our genes, and in many, and I think it somehow is. I don't know how to, let's say, will they find a well-being gene? But there's memory of well-being, and that I find that is definitely somehow in our DNA, because even if you find people who have suffered a lot in their lives, suffered from the start of their lives, and have traumatic events, and have experienced very little well-being in their life, still if they're are constantly trying to get back to that well-being. So even if it hasn't been in their experience, there's some sort of memory in our bodies that we need to be in that well-being. What would you say, to, kind of, how would you say it feels to how would you say to find the well-being, like in a simple way? Let's say, obviously it's always contextual, but how do we find well-being when it's lost? Is there something specific that you would say to our listeners, that a technique, maybe something that could apply in many situations?
So the work that we do is it's so much deeper than a technique, you see. It's almost an understanding that means there's no need for techniques. It's more about a deeper knowing that even when I can't feel my well-being, even when it feels lost and out of reach or insufficient in supply, that's not the truth. That the truth of the matter is that well-being is me, that I am it. There is no separation from it. And that just because I'm not feeling it or not able to access it right now doesn't mean it's not there. It is still there, just like the sun on the days where we can't see it. And so if we can be open to getting from our own insight more of an awareness of that constant, ever-present well-being, even in the absence of it, then that strengthens our confidence and our conviction that it is always there. So that then when we have times of struggle, rather than being hopeless and lost in the face of that struggle, we have the confidence and the curiosity to embrace that experience and just be open to learning from it.
I have a technique that I help people to remember. First of all, to remember, because people just lose it. Like you said, they forget that there is well-being, but then just kind of a reminder of some sort to something like put a ring in your finger, or paint a nail in your finger, or like I have a mantra that I sing to myself in my mind when I find myself going into that conditioning space, that I'm telling myself that same narrative, that it comes and nagging, and then I just first thing is always to remember that. So I have some sort of reminder with me, then distracts me away from that, because I think the distraction first from when you go into those patterns that are a bit self-destructive or negative in some ways. So it's very handy to have some sort of reminder around you in places of your body, for example, that are always there. Say, okay, narrative, thank you, bye-bye. And then you start, and then I replace that with a mantra. I say something that reminds me of a very safe place. So let's say,
So we do have in our program, we do have a series of steps that people can take away with them, which just helps them to remember what the program teaches, which really normalizes all human experience. To know that even when I'm feeling anxious and stressed and overwhelmed, that's not a sign that there's something wrong with me or my situation. That's just a sign that my mind has outsourced that innate well-being to some external factor right now. And even if I don't know what that is to begin with, just the fact that I can remember that it's normal to have these feelings, it's not a sign that there's something, that there's a real problem. That in itself is quite settling and comforting, to just allow a person to settle down. And then a metaphor that we'll use that can be very helpful is to visualize yourself as the vast ocean. And that in that ocean, there are huge waves of feeling that will be passing through you. And some of them may feel and look like they're going to threaten your existence, but ultimately they can't. They just crash and they dissolve. And when we can compare our well-being to that vast ocean, and to know that we are designed and equipped to handle all of those feeling waves that come through us, then again, that's another beautiful way of changing that perspective with the feeling, to know that it's just moving through you. You are not the feeling. The feeling is just some energy of your mind that's passing through you. That's all it is. It can't actually hurt you. And that can be very settling as well, and hopeful to remember, yes, it doesn't matter how uncomfortable or painful or intense this feeling is right now. I'm designed to experience all feelings as a human being, and this one is no different from any other. It might just come in a bitter, with a bitter taste and an intense experience of discomfort, but it's not made in any different way to any other feeling. And I can actually handle this. And so then we can be more resilient in the face of these uncomfortable feelings. And when we're accessing that resilience, then instead of being afraid of our experience, we can just be curious about it.
There's always an opportunity in a challenge.
Exactly. So instead of resisting the feeling, we can embrace it. And we can be curious. Now, what is my mind believing right now that's creating this intense experience for me? And without any pressure to fix it or change it, or then very naturally, when we're asking the right questions, our mind can help us. It can reveal what that fear is.
Absolutely. Beautiful analogy, that sea. So letting the feelings and emotions just flow through. You're a resilient being floating on the water. I like that very much. So that's I think a great way to finish our conversation. So but before we do that, how can people find your program? What would be the best way to get familiar with iHeart?
Yes, so we have a great website with a lot of information on it. So that's iHeartPrinciples.com. And we have a number of events that are coming up soon if people are interested. There's one coming up on the 27th of this month on the Monday evening at 7 p.m. It's a webinar. It's called Powering Up Our Parental Influence, Saving Our Children from a Virtual World. And again, it's a free webinar that you can just sign up for, where Terry Rubenstein, our founder, is going to be interviewing Ian Russell, whose daughter Molly tragically died to suicide a number of years ago. And he's held Twitter and Instagram and all of these platforms responsible for her death because of the very dangerous material that was sent her way without him being able to do anything about it or even be aware of it. And so he's someone who he said when he found out about the work we do at iHeart, how if only his daughter had learnt this, it could have saved her life. She would still be alive. And so I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion and a very empowering one, again, to show parents how by helping their children to be more resilient, to understand the innate resilience within their minds and not being conditioned to outsource their self-worth and confidence to all these different things that the media is telling you to look a certain way, or to have certain things, or to be like everyone else, that when you're resilient to those beliefs, because you know they're not true, then actually you're equipping your children to be able to handle and use social media without it getting the better of them, without it becoming a detrimental influence in their lives. So that's going to be a wonderful way to hear about the work that iHeart's doing and how relevant it is for children and parents. And I'll also give you a link for a podcast that Terry Rubenstein has just launched called The Resilience Files. And she's interviewing a whole host of really fascinating guests, each with their own amazing story of resilience. And she relates that to this framework that we teach people. So those are sort of interesting ways to start learning a bit more about what we do. And you can always contact me, Debbie, at iHeartprinciples.com. We can pass out that information too, and I'll be happy to direct you to whatever offering is going to be most relevant, whether it's some resilience tutoring, or a group training, or a facilitator training, or bringing iHeart into your children's school, whatever it might be.
And I thoroughly recommend that. I mean, it was life-changing for us as a family, and such a joyful way to learn how to manage life. We're very, very grateful for you, and I'm grateful for this session with you. It's been a joy to have you, and I'll see you hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anu.
Bye, Debbie. Bye-bye.
Bye.